all Hindu temples, if you go into most of our temples, you have the tortoise right at the beginning. You have lamps in the shape of the tortoise at the base. The tortoise is a constant reminder of withdrawing yourself from the distractions of the external world. Okay. So if you see, and in the Gita too, there is a reference to the tortoise, as in how you should withdraw your senses when you're completely distracted to make sure that your focus remains where it needs to remain. Because we are human beings. So obviously, we are going to have disappointments, extreme joys, excitements. All of this will come. How? Based on the five senses that we are blessed.
Yeah.
And when we allow our senses to lead us, that's when our mind does not go. But if we take control and become like the tortoise, and that the presence of the tortoise in our temples is a reminder of that you have the ability to withdraw yourself. Use that.
Using breakdowns as a way for breakthrough. And I think you've actually done that in your life. And I'm just curious, because when initially we go through a breakdown, or, our dreams don't really happen the way we want it to happen, there's a lot of heartbreak and there's a lot of disappointment. So from that stage, how do you really turn it around to a breakthrough? How did you make it happen for yourself?
I think a breakdown is tough, whichever way you look at it. And each time, every time, it is tough. It doesn't get easier because, if you are really taking a path of adventure, you are not sitting inside in a comfortable zone where you are not going to have those breakdowns. That's the only place you may not encounter breakdowns. But that's a sad place, right? Because it doesn't allow you to grow. It stifles everything good inside of you. But the moment you get out of that comfort zone and you really start to get into the fear zone before you hit the growth zone. So that's where I think a lot of our realizations, the lessons come to the fore. And over a period of time, I think I created a little framework for me to decode that and to live through that and to not allow the breakdown to get to me. And in fact, to see it all the way through till I got that breakthrough. Mm-hmm. And today I, use this framework with a lot of my clients, and they seem to do wonderfully well with that because it's one of the tools that we use to build the resilience muscle. Mm-hmm. And it's a muscle, and you do build it over time once you start to actually welcome the process and not fear it. So what are those 5 steps? I call them the 5A framework. Mm-hmm. And Shweta, it starts first with, sitting quietly in the awareness, just to get that awareness of what has happened. Yeah, and sit in that moment to soak it all in, to feel it fully, and to have that realization that what is it? Right? And then not rush that particular time, that pause, which is so essential. And once you sort of, got that awareness and you're operating from that awareness, the next stage then is really a stage of acceptance. Mm-hmm. And that's where, we move from the hugely emotional to the more logical, right? Where we start to interpret as we are accepting that, how did this happen, mm-hmm. right? And why did this happen to me? Yeah. So so that is something which I think is also an important stage where you need to fully feel the feelings, own them, and not judge yourself for having those, because you're already going through something which is a tough situation for you. And on top of that, if you judge yourself, and most of us are sharp critics, and first I didn't get that, and now I'm sitting and moaning, so you do double damage to yourself. So that's something that I say no, just accept it and start to move to the third stage, which is assess. So in assessment, we really come to a place where we are looking at, okay, so this has happened. this has happened to me. It's really tough. It's unfortunate. What are the options that I have in front of me? Who can I ask for support? Right? What are some of the things that I feel I'm capable of doing? So this is typically a place where we sit down and we revisit our strengths. We revisit, past turmoils where we successfully overcame those to move ourselves to a better place. We look at examples of sometimes other people who've been able to navigate something similar and come out on top. Really being able to navigate that so beautifully. And all of that gives you a feeling of strength. It gives you a feeling of being prepared. And that leads you to the fourth A, which is really taking action on that. Because without action, everything is just a thought, and we can keep ruminating and overthinking and stressing ourselves. But the idea is to quickly move from the assess stage, take whatever support you need, and move to the action stage to actually do something about it, because action then generates a lot of energy. It changes your vibration, and it allows you to start acting in a way that will move you to a place where you enter the zone of possibilities, right? So fear starts to give way to possibilities. Your thinking changes, your energy is different, and your mind becomes a lot more solution oriented, and far away from that first stage where you were sitting in awareness and in shock with what had happened. So already you can see in step 4, you've moved a long way from there. And the last step really is to acknowledge. Once you've taken that action, you sit down with yourself again and acknowledge that how far have I come? What all did I do? How have I fared? Has it given me the outcomes that I wanted to create? And if there are big wins that you have, you need to celebrate and pat yourself on the back. And if things are still not, where you want them to be, then you know that I can start it all over again, and I can reach a place that that is my desired place. And that really is the breakthrough. So the first step was, if I just bookend this framework from breakdown, and the last is the breakthrough that you emerge from.
The fact that you were feeling comfortable was what prompted you to change tracks when you were 50, right? And I want to just delve a little deeper on that, because usually that comfort is what we're seeking for, right? That security, that assurance that yes, everything is going on track and things are predictable, dependable, reliable. Most of us in a society, we are raised to value all of those things, right? And you had all of those things when you were 50 and leading a comfortable life, but that prompted a change in you. So what was missing? What really triggered that? Even in that comfort, you felt something was not right.
I think I just mentioned that is that it's when you wake up in the morning and you don't feel that joy. It's that, I don't think so. Even a day of being alive without joy is, you've got all these very false concepts. It's a false narrative that's told. This is what I figured out with time. Perhaps it happens with time that you figure this out. Some people figure it out early, some people take time, and some people never figure this out. That there is nothing called, safety. This word safe, if life itself is unsafe, how can you expect certainty when your life is uncertain? That's the false narrative that we hold, that there is something called certainty in life. And life is going to be a flux. It is going to be challenges. It is going to keep on changing. Now, people are losing their jobs. So they say jobs are safe. I say, okay, look around. Where do you think is the jobs are safe? So, there is no such thing like safety when you're alive. What is really true is, what I figured out is life is a story, and you are the storyteller of your own life. You can make it the most adventurous story that you tell, or you can make it the most boring film that you have ever created. It's your choice. Like what you are doing right now is, not many people will get out and start doing what you are doing, but you are actually enjoying in the process of expressing yourself. You are expressing. I think people need to just express themselves. We're so bogged down by the expectations of others. and what will others think, and that we want to compete with the neighbor, and that we want to show off to others, that we create our own, kind of this is not okay kind of thing. And advertising is doing us big disservice. And now I come from a marketing background, and from this, I think that advertising starts telling us you're not okay. You're not okay the way you are. You're fat, you're thin, you're this, you're that, and you need to change. And you're bald, so you need to do a hair transplant. And you're gray, so you need to color your hair black. And you need to look like. It's all these things which are saying constantly to you are not okay. But I think the first thing that we need to do is to say that, I love myself the way I am, and this is who I am. Take me as I am. If you don't want to take me the way I am, it's okay. It's I'm not living for you. This is my life. So I think when I figured that piece out, that somewhere it struck me that, how much of falsehood we have created in our own lives, of creating, and we think that we are living our life, but we are actually not. We are living what the society expects us. First, our parents, teachers, then our bosses, then what everybody else. I mean, where is that the child in you that was expressive, that didn't care? You danced when you wanted to, you sang when you wanted to, you jumped in the rains when you wanted to. You could just do what you wanted to. I mean, you lived your life. And then we say, somewhere down the line, we have lost this whole ability to dream and to actually live our life on our own terms. So I think that comes to you when you start getting up in the morning. If you ask me specifically, you will start feeling it inside you. You don't want to get out there, but you are going there because you got a paycheck. Now you are in a bond. People take home loans. I tell people, think before you take your home loans. Because once you're out there and once you have to pay your EMIs,
You're stuck.
You are now stuck for the next 20 years or 30 years. You have to pay that EMI no matter what.
So you have to get that paycheck.
You have to, you work for a paycheck. Then you're not working for, what you love to do. You're starting to do, and there's nothing wrong. I don't tell people you don't buy a house, but that's not the priority. Priority is to find yourself and to live from that place where you want to get up in the morning and get out, and it doesn't look like work or what you're doing. It looks like something you love to do, so you just enjoy. Like if you had to do a podcast and you said, okay, come 9 p.m. in the night or 10 p.m. in the night or a Saturday evening, you'd be in joy that if there's a person on the other side who could give you a good story, you would say, okay, great. I mean, I'm okay. Absolutely. I think that's what we need from life. I mean, why the hell do you want to live a life which is tied to, things which are not you? I mean, I just sometimes want to shake up people, literally. Maybe it's taken me time to get it, but now that I've got it, I want to tell as many people that, just go out there and live, and there's nothing to be afraid of. Finally, you're going to die. Be certain of that. If that's certain, then what's worse that can happen to you?
Something I've heard you say before, mostly in the context of scaling up businesses, that it's very important to build a strong foundation, and then you can build a skyscraper over it and it will be steady. And for some reason, when I heard you say that, it also to me reflected that life is also similar, right? There are many foundation blocks that you build in terms of values or, whatever goes into making that strong foundation. And I think you build a life well lived over that. So for listeners who are probably in their 20s, early 30s, still figuring out what life is and really confused about where to go, how to navigate the ups and downs, how would you say they can go about building that strong foundation for themselves?
We can always connect the dots only backwards, as Steve Jobs said. And when I started to do that for my own life, a few things emerged for me very strongly. And that's something that I would love to share with those, especially those who are in their 20s and 30s, because your entire life is ahead of you. And it's not too much, but it's a few things. If done well and done at the right time, they can make a big difference to the quality of your overall life. And I will go back, and you've probably heard a lot of it during this podcast already, but I will really go back to saying that start with saying, I am responsible. I am 100% responsible for my life and my career. And the moment we say that, you immediately change from playing victim to being a victor. It's a very empowering statement. It might feel scary if you're not used to taking responsibility, but hey, if you don't take responsibility for your life and allow someone else or wait for other people to do that, guess what? It may not happen, or it may not happen when you want it and how you want it. And is that a desirable way to live? So that's the first thing. I take 100% responsibility of me, right? The second is to sit down at least once a year, I would say, and to go deep in trying to understand your values. I say that again because when we lead busy lives, also when we are surrounded by friends, co-workers, social media influences, sometimes we forget who we really are. And especially in the younger years, the tendency is to fit in rather than to stand out. And all the forces are in a way conspiring to make you more like everybody else so that you don't feel like an oddity. So you do that to yourself, the others do that to you as well. Everything from the way you talk, the way you dress, the way you make career choices, life partner choices. A lot of that is, dictated by outside external factors and internal conditioning. So can you challenge that? And the way to do that is first to know who you are and to connect back with your values. The third is, and I can't say that enough, to really know what your purpose is. And maybe you cannot be living that at the age of 23 or so, you feel. But once you start to at least have that awareness, over a period of time, you will start to see that you design a life which is far more in alignment with your purpose than it is against it. Yeah. Right? Because it's sad if you discover that at the age of 40 or 50 or 60, and then you have all those regrets of things you could have done, the person you could have been, and you weren't. So now that you have access to information like this, take it seriously and use it, right? And the fourth thing, which is a very useful tool, and Shweta, I've seen this work again amazingly well with my clients, is called the Wheel of Life, where we help you to look at your entire life as a wheel with different sections. So you have the health section, the wealth section, the career, the relationships, contribution, hobbies, right? So all of these things together form our life. Mm-hmm. But when we are young, sometimes it's just career, sometimes it's just romance, sometimes it's, tight finances, or sometimes it's just the urge to break away, rebel, and not have any discipline, and live with that streak of madness for a while, only to perhaps regret it later because you don't have anything close to, earning a decent retirement corpus when you would need it. Right. So everything has consequences. So that's where look at your life in entirety. And this Wheel of Life allows you to harmonize all different areas of your life and see them together rather than seeing them as disjointed parts. That's why I never believe in work-life balance, because there wouldn't be balance. It's a misnomer. You go all in at work at times, and you go all in, in love at all, some of the times. But overall, how can you harmonize all these areas so that you create a life by design and not by default? So that's something which I think is something that will enable you. And last but not the least, like I keep saying, don't just think of the I, but think of those around you. And think about not just fitting in, but what could you do that could add value to you and everybody around you. And believe you me, that will leave you in a state of big fulfillment, and perhaps it will lead you to your purpose as well. Yeah. Right? So these are the 5 things that I really strongly advocate. 100% responsibility, connection with your values, helping yourself to reveal your purpose, doing the Wheel of Life exercise at least once every year. And last but not the least, really look at the others and not just yourself as the center of the universe, but seeing how do you add value with everything you do.
This brings me to the interesting part, which you also mentioned in the book, right? About you being a management consultant, whining and dining, and then, walking the path of yoga and suddenly moving to austerity and minimalism and, tapas, as we call it in our journey. So I'm just curious, how was that journey for you? And if someone is still caught in that worldly race, where would you say they start?
Okay, so this is a very, very profound question. I know you smiled and asked that question, but I want to tell you that yes, initially it's like a reaffirmation of what a cool guy I am, and I want to do these things to again remind myself of how cool I am. That's one way of looking at it. But if indeed you have been fortunate enough, I guess I would say I was fortunate enough to somehow encounter the Yoga Sutras and bring myself crashing down on the world, on the earth. Another way to look at it is that it's a form of duty. Now, I'll define it without trying to, appear like I'm talking nonsense. There are two ways of looking at it. One is duty to those who, who depend on you, whether they like it or not. I mean, whether they are spiritually out there or not or whatever. But there are people who may be dependent on you, and therefore, I cannot engage in a spiritual conversation with them and tell them not to be. So that would be very cruel to do so. That is really not fair. That's one way. The second thing to do, which I think I needed a couple of friends to tell me this is, So, for example, and before I talk about management consulting, I'll talk about music, and I'll connect it. So, like I said, I was very fortunate to be given music or some knowledge of music by some great people. It is my fortune. It is not that I was such a cool guy. I'm very aware at this moment that chance brought me to their feet. They gave me this knowledge. Okay. Without that knowledge, I am actually nobody. Now, having said that, what happened during the COVID period was one of my friends said, look, we all are sitting and wasting our time. Why don't you just teach us some music? And I had never actually taught vocal music before. I'm a violinist. At the most, I might teach the violin, and even that is a difficult thing to do because many people don't have the patience to learn the violin. But be that as it may, somebody said, "Why don't you teach us, basics of music?" And I've never done that ever. I said, "Chalo, let me give it a shot." So I started teaching, and word spread that this is guy, crazy fellow in Bangalore. He will teach music for nothing. I was not willing to charge. So I started teaching. I had some 20-25 people in no time at all. I would spend all my time, teaching. And then, so that was one. Going back to this business of management consulting itself, in both the cases, you may possess some knowledge, okay? And the idea then is, don't keep it to yourself, give it away. Now, the give it away might be, does it mean free? Now, I used to think free, and again, that is also a destructive thing because, unfortunately, the reality is, and even in our ancient system, they say you can't take it free. You have to give Guru Dakshina. That's how they called it, So, so the question is, if I happen to be fortunate enough to know something because of my own idea, or I somehow read about it and became an expert about it, then is it not my duty to pass on that knowledge of whatever, this music or concepts or whatever, to somebody? That's how I justify it. Okay. One from a point of view of duty, the other of giving away whatever you may know, because ultimately you're not going to take it with you. So the more you jettison in whichever form, formal, informal, whether it's monetized, non-monetized, give it away. But again, if you're hung up with a monetizing part for its own reasons, then again you're in trouble.
I think you mentioned in one of the interviews that one of the biggest lessons you learned writing the second book was, this message of stop thinking, right?
Yeah.
And I think as a generation, we are overthinkers, right? We're just so compulsive. Thought is something that just happens, no matter how hard you try to, kind of be conscious about it. So I'm just curious, what kind of practices have helped you keep learning that lesson of stop thinking, and what does it open up for you when you actually manage to stop thinking?
So I think to be able to trust your inner instinct, your gut feeling is one, but before you reach there, because that is kind of difficult, we do have certain courses which we teach you to trust your intuition and learn to work with your intuition. But let's say not everyone does do it. So I think journaling is very important, because what is thinking or what is overthinking? You're recycling the same thought without any resolution, without any solution. And because now the mind is starting to believe that no matter how much I'm thinking, there is no solution, it starts to get into that panic mode, and the worry and anxiety and all that shows up, right? Yes. So if something is getting repeated, please put them on pen and paper. And also keep writing letters to yourself about how you're feeling. Mm-hmm. It sounds very cliche, but it works. Fortunately, it works. Yeah. It sounds easy, but at some point when you learn how to do it, and with practice it comes, then you realize that through journaling, you're learning a lot about yourself, a lot more about yourself, and so many emotions you can manage it just because you're letting them out of your system and onto the paper. And for recycled thoughts, obviously, you just make a list and take it out of your mind. Once it is on the paper, the mind believes that you're going to take action. So now it doesn't have to keep reminding you of it.
Yeah.
So this is for, any practical overthinking daily issues and challenges. The third thing is because not everyone can meditate, but I definitely suggest going into the nature. Either you walk or even you just go sit by a lake or in a forest or a park or whatever in greens, and just sit there, just watch, observe. That calms you down, and the moment you calm down, slowly the distance between thoughts becomes larger. So then you're slowing down the process of thinking. This is somewhere I'm sure everyone else has read it or heard it. It really reduced your inflow of inputs and messages. You have to reduce social media. See, whenever an information is received, the mind has to process it. Yeah. It cannot park it. That is the nature of the mind. Whatever comes to it, it has to process, because it has to understand whether it is a threat to the survival or it is good for thriving. Yeah. And unfortunately, it catches hold of the threats to the survival, because originally, what is your mind's job? To help you survive. Yeah. Everything else comes next. So it holds into those fearful thoughts, and you don't even realize it. You have watched a scary movie on TV. You do not realize it, how 6 years down the line, the same thing can cause a miscarriage in a woman, because the fear has been seated, So really, you have to be watchful of what kind of information you allow into your system. Yeah. If the information is making you uncomfortable, you should stop it. It is your energy system. You're not a dustbin that anything should be entering your system. You should really check what is happening with you, right? Mm-hmm. The same way we check our children that, okay, no, you can't watch this movie, you can't play that game. Same thing is for us, So that is third. Then, of course, meditation helps, but meditation doesn't mean you sit for 1 hour with your eyes closed. You can meditate with your eyes open. The only thing actual meditation is when you become aware of your breath. You can be driving, you can be talking, you can be eating, you can be dancing. But if you're aware of your breath, you're meditating. Yeah. So, So I think these things would really help and stop overthinking. And the last thing I want to say, if you're overthinking about something, find a confidant, go and confide in someone who's your well-wisher. Again, you're taking it out of your system. And of course, that person can give you suggestion, or just you need to be heard probably most of the times. And that's it. It's not very difficult.